Spell speed 4 is a fan-made term referring to cards that have effects which your opponent cannot respond to. There are not very many cards with this kind of effect, and even less that are good. But this video will try to list the 10 best of the bunch anyway. At number 10 we have YuGiOh, Lord of Searing Flames. This card has a soft spell speed 4 effect, in that once per turn it can destroy one of your opponent's spell and trap cards, and neither player can activate spell or trap cards in response to this effect. But it does not exclude monster effects, so it's not a pure spell speed 4 of nothing being chainable to its effect. But it's good enough. If you're going to pop a trap card like Compulse or Solemn Strike, they can't chain it to this effect, which is still pretty good. What's not so good about this card is its summoning requirement though. It requires you to send 3 face-up trap cards to the graveyard to special summon it from your hand. That may not seem like much, but that's a little bit too much for a card that just pops back row and might have a high attack power value with tons of traps in the graveyard. Number 9, Borreload Dragon. This card has a spell speed 4 effect that allows it to reduce the attack and defense of a monster by 500 permanently once per turn during both players' turns. This card is really good, quite possibly one of the most used cards in the extra deck. Not really for its spell speed 4 effect though. It also can't be targeted by monster effects, and can steal monsters by attacking into them. Those 2 effects are why people play this card. The quick effect is just a nice bonus on top of all of that, and that's why it's at a lower spot on the list. Its spell speed 4 effect isn't really why this card is so good, and people would still play the card en masse if that effect was removed. Number 8, Nordic Relic Laevateinn. This card has an effect that allows you to destroy a monster that destroyed a monster by battle this turn, on spell speed 4. The spell speed 4 nature of this card allows it to destroy cards that normally could dodge destruction effects, like Stardust Dragon or rank 10 trains, which is honestly pretty niche and not super important, since it requires the monster to destroy a monster by battle to activate this effect. You'd have to crash one of your monsters into the monster you wanted to destroy to proc this card's effect, or wait for your opponent to attack you. Both are too much effort for what the card does, and not super worth it. But since it is a pure spell speed 4 card, I have it at a higher spot than the 2 above who weren't as spell speed 4 focused. So the rest of this list will be more spell speed 4 involved cards, and they'll have their places on this list for their spell speed 4 effects. Number 7, Oddeyes Gravity Dragon. When this card is special summoned, you can return all spell and trap cards your opponent controls to their hand, and they can't activate any cards in response to this effect. So it's basically like a one-sided spell speed 4 giant Trunade, which is not half bad, since Oddeyes decks can easily OTK your opponent. And on top of its Trunade effect, it also has a built-in Flare Metal Dragon-like effect, where your opponent must pay 500 life points to activate effects, which is a pretty great effect, making this card almost worth its ritual summoning cost of being a ritual monster. Number 6, Fairy Knight Ingunar. This card has the effect to return all other cards on the field back to the hand, with no cards being able to activate cards in response to this effect. This effect is a powerful board wipe, as it gets rid of problem cards in the field, and in a way that doesn't destroy them, so it can clear out pretty much anything that isn't just straight up immune to its effect. And with the spell speed 4 nature of its effect, there's no counterplay to its board wipe once it's used. However, its effect itself is actually spell speed 1, so it has to come into play first before it can activate its effect. So other spell speed 2 effects can shut it down before it gets a chance to pull off its effect, like using an effect veiler on it as soon as it's summoned. And this is kind of a good example of why spell speed 4 is a weird term. Like I said at the start of the video, spell speed 4 is just a fan-made term for these kinds of effects, not an official one. But actually, there are a lot of cards that spell speed 4 effects can't be activated in response to, or are at the original spell speed of 1, like with Fairy Knight. It's just none of the spell speed 2 or 3 cards can be activated in response to them, so it's kind of artificially faster. Number 5, Xing Sin Replica. This card has the effect to choose a set spell or trap card on the field and lock it down so it can't be activated as long as this card is face up. All on spell speed 4, so no activating the targeted card in response to this lockdown's effect. This card can be useful for locking down a trap card that you really don't want activated, and maybe don't want in the graveyard either, like picking off a searched out Trickstar reincarnation. In Duel Links, this card is a little more useful since spell and trap card removal is more sparse in that game, and battle traps are actually super dangerous, like Wall of Disruption, or just chainable traps like Treacherous Trap Hole. And then later on it can be used as a tribute for Vision Hero Witch Raider, to clear your opponent's back row. But outside of these Duel Links usefulness, this card is kind of too underpowered to be played in any kind of meta deck in the TCG. It's just not worth running over cards like Twin Twister for the most part. Number 4, Anti-Magic Arrows. This card can only be activated at the start of the battle phase, and for the rest of the turn, spell and traps cannot be activated. Also, no cards can be activated in response to this card's effect. This card is really good if you know you're about to OTK your opponent, and don't want to worry about a Mirror Force ruining your day, or a Wall of Disruption in Duel Links, where this card is more useful as people don't really play battle traps anymore in the TCG. In which case, anti-magic arrows can still be useful in setting up plays, by using it in the battle phase, and then going into the main phase 2 and set up your board without worrying about a Solemn Warning or Torrential Tribute ruining your day. In which case, it can be used as a slightly faster version of Trap Stun. Number 3, Ultra Polymerization. At the cost of 2,000 life points, you can fusion summon using monsters on the field you control, and this fusion summon is spell speed 4, so there's no stopping it. But unlike normal poly, you can't use monsters in your hand, so it's more restrictive and harder to pull off. Now, its second effect from the graveyard allows you to banish this card from the graveyard, target the fusion monster brought out by this card, and then special summon the monsters used as material from your graveyard, with their effects negated and attack and defense set to 0. Now this second effect is what makes this a good card, as you can use those 0 attack monsters to just go into extra deck plays. That is, as long as you have the free space, seeing as the fusion monster brought out by this card will take up your extra deck zone. You can't actually use the monsters brought back with its second effect unless you want to use the fusion monster itself on those combos, or you already have a link monster out. This kind of puts a limit on the usefulness of the card, but there are still some decks that can potentially get out a link monster and fusion material cards to make full use of its effect. It's just definitely something you can't use in all fusion decks. Number 2, Qliphort Stealth. This card has the spell speed 4 effect that if it's tribute summoned using at least one Klee monster, you can target a card on the field and return it to the hand, which is a really good non-destruction way to get rid of problem boss monsters, as well as a guaranteed clear as they can't chain disruption to it. And since Klee monsters are all about getting out tribute fodder easily, and 2 of them even have extra effects when tributed, Stealth probably has one of the most useful spell speed 4 effects in the game. Easy to use, practical removal. But this is not the best spell speed 4 effect in the game. That easily goes to number 1. And number 1, Super Polymerization. This card has the effect to discard 1 card, then fusion summon a monster using monsters on either side of the field, and no cards can be activated in response to its effect. Now, what's so good about this card that it was banned for a few years until recently, was that it's basically monster removal on your opponent, non-destruction monster removal mind you, while also gaining advantage. That can be used during your opponent's turn to disrupt plays, and can't be counterplayed due to its spell speed 4 nature. If you're playing heroes, you can steal any of your opponent's monsters for a fusion summon of one of the Omni heroes. If playing Shaddolls, same thing, except for light type monsters. In fact, Shaddolls is basically why this card got banned. And metal foes have 2 fusion monsters that can steal any monster that simply has less than 3,000 or 2,500 attack. If you play none of the 3 deck examples above, You can just use Diplexer Chimera in your extra deck to steal 2 of your opponent's Link monsters potentially, as most Link monsters are Cybers type. But Dragon of the Swamp, which just requires 2 monsters of the same attribute but different types, which covers a wide range of decks and extra decks. Venom Fusion Dragon if your opponent is playing Dark type monsters, and a few other fusion monsters to get more specific in their typing and attribute requirements, but make good Super Poly targets, like Cyber Eternity Dragon or something. But all these tech fusion monsters require a lot of extra deck space, so it's only useful if you're playing a deck like True Draco, for example, who don't use their extra deck, so you can stack it with cards for Super Poly plays. But with Super Poly at 1, I'm not sure it's really worth it, but I guess you can search it out with Cobra, so maybe. Alright, and that's the end of the video. Any other super great spell speed 4 cards I missed that should have made the list? You want to argue the true nature of the term spell speed 4, since it's kind of dumb since they can't be chained to counter trap cards? Or just have suggestions for more videos just like this one? I'd love to hear about them down in the comments.